Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Rangers Reunion Roundtable for your coronavirus pandemic listening. I'm Evan Grant from the Dallas Morning News, and I'm joined by some guys who should be recognizable, but there is a whole lot of gray on our screen right now. I think the way you'll see this in my upper left, I think you recognize Pudge. There's still some salt and pepper in the gray. Say hello, Pudge.
Wow.
How you doing? Hello, fellas. How you doing? Good to have you.
Mark McLemore, how are you?
I'm well, man. I'm well. I will say I don't have as much gray as the ottle ones. I'll say
No,
that.
you don't. But
That's
that's
because I shaved off the rest of it.
Than this last guy right here. Rusty, do you have any red hair left? What's your hair up top look like?
Oh, I'll show you. I ain't got a lot left. I can tell you that. I got a few strands of red, but that's it. It's mostly white.
So Rusty Greer,
I want to be like Mac. I want to be like you and Mac. I don't want to have hair.
There you go. It's easy to take care of, baby. Easy. So this is our 1990s roundtable. All three of you guys were on the playoff teams that the Rangers had from 1996, 1998, and 1999, and wanted to talk with you a little bit about those seasons. They were clearly very memorable for Ranger fans. I want to start with 96. This team had come off the shortened season in 95. Was there a feeling going into camp with Johnny that you guys were a contender?
I think we really felt that we had a really good team. And I think as things progressed throughout the year, we really started feeling like, hey, and probably before the All-Star break, we were thinking, okay, I know I was, we've got a good team. We've got a chance to win the division and get into postseason play for the first time.
Well, to me, I got a good feeling with the pitching staff that we have at the time. I think we have a pretty good, solid starting pitchers, guys that it wasn't hurt. I mean, they started spring training in great shape, start the season very well. And, when later on in the season, when games start to go by, they get the starting pitcher gets stronger and stronger and stronger, and that was the reason that I have a good feeling that we're gonna have a good year. We know that we have a good offensive team and defensive team, but when you have a starting pitcher, the one that we have that year was pretty impressive.
Rusty, what do you think going into that year?
I think for me, the starting pitching was good. The offense was really good. But I think the biggest thing that made that team a team is we all got along and enjoyed each other. And I think in today's world, that kind of thing is overlooked a lot. And from spring training on, it was probably the best team I've ever been on from the chemistry standpoint, from Pudge and Mac to Will and Kevin Elster and Darrell Hamilton. He's not with us anymore, but he was probably the major cog in that whole thing. Keeping everybody loose. So I think that team chemistry at times put us over the top.
And then when I have a center field like you, behind the plate, they just run into the wall and kill himself, making a catch and dive forward, left to right, makes my job 10 times easier behind the plate.
Listen, he only did that. He only did that when Darren Oliver was pitching.
At least that's what I heard all the time.
Hey, Mac, you did have such a big part in really driving the chemistry all three of those years, really. What was your approach to that? And I think Johnny Oates turned a lot of that responsibility over to you. So how did you view the responsibility of trying to help create chemistry?
Well, having watched teams in the past that I played on, when I first came up the Angels, they were a really good team, been in postseason play, and being in that clubhouse after those years, watching the chemistry that they had and the fun that they had, not just on the field, but in the clubhouse, on the planes, on the buses, during the off season, being together. I knew that was going to be an important part. So I just really tried to keep everybody loose. I know I played better when I was loose. So I would just try and keep everybody loose. And I think I had something different for every guy that I would look for every day the guys came in. But it wasn't just me. I think that gets overplayed way too much. Everybody was like that. I mean, somebody was always going to be doing something, from Will to D Ham to, me to Pudge. It could have been anybody at any given time. So it was truly a team in those days.
Well, if it was me, they prefer me to play every day, because when I got those days off, I was a pain in the ass.
Oh
In
my
the dugout,
God.
they just always tell me, get out of here, get out of my sight. You need to go back and play. So
on the field.
It's like I'm good with Mac. The chemistry, me, I always love to play every day, but when I was, even when I was playing, I was still having fun. I was still, joking around, making everybody lose. And I remember that Mac always does that on the field. When he plays on the field, keeping everybody awake. And and I think that's the key. When you have teammates that get along very good, the way that we did it during those years, I mean, you're gonna win a lot of ball games.
Yeah, and I'm with Mac. I don't think it was necessarily one person. I think that Mac fed off of Darrell Hamilton. Darrell Hamilton fed off of Kenny Hill. Kenny Hill fed off of Bobby Witt. And so it was one of those deals. And for me, Darren and I were the young guys on the team, because Johnny, he was a veteran team guy. And Darren and I kept our head below the firing line most days, because most of the venom was directed at us. And that probably doesn't happen in today's world, but the venom that was directed at us wouldn't fly too well today.
But
Those were love taps. It wasn't venom. They were love taps.
Yeah. If I could list some quotes that were said at some bus rides and plane rides.
Please be our guest. Go right ahead.
Yeah, and locker next to Will. I mean, every day I caught him too, and you leave him out. Will's got the reputation of being this burly, surly guy, but he was one of the biggest ones in there. That was a jokester and the goat that was left at us, all that stuff. It was fun.
The story that, that was the last year before I covered the Rangers. And so not being around, the one story that I heard that year was about how this team in August, when things started to kind of go a little bit, got a little bit rough, the meeting that Dave Valley called. And I think you guys have all talked a little bit about that in the past, but what do you remember from that meeting, and how did that whole thing come about, and what did it do for you?
Wow. I'll tell you, what I really remember was the end of the meeting, when Val, after giving that impassioned speech, it's one of the best that I've ever heard to rally a team to go out there and get it done. He went around to everybody and said, Pudge, are you with me? Rusty, are you with me? Mac, are you with me? And he hit everybody like that. And after all of the things that he had said up to that point, I mean, it was definitely a buildup. But when he did that at the end of it, I mean, it was like we all just busted out of that clubhouse. I believe we were in Toronto. We busted out of that clubhouse ready to start the game, and it's 5 o'clock. We still had 2 hours to wait for the game to get started.
He was so fired up that he using all kind of capital words possible you can imagine. And I don't want to say some words that he said in that meetings, but those words that he used and the way that Max said, he went to every individual player. Are you with me? Are you with me? Are you with me? And I'm like, yeah, I am. So we just kind of like, man, this is what we need. This is what we need. And, great teammate, great guy, always one of those guys that is in the bench after everybody. If we're not doing something or non-effort or something on the field, he was the one to come and sit down with you and tell you. And but that meeting right there, I think was one of the key ones for us that get us going.
Yeah, in most team meetings, and I think we can call it what it is, They don't do a whole lot. It's I watch. Everybody knows you're playing bad, so we're going to have a meeting. But that particular one for me,
We love meetings, right? The media loves the meetings.
I mean, it was to their point, it was the best meeting I ever heard. And the thing about it is, Dave Valley called the meeting, and he was the only one that spoke. Correct, guys? If I remember that right.
Yeah.
Only one that spoke. And when he was done, everybody was in. And we were fired up, and we turned around and started playing better.
And believe me, everybody listened because you guys know how big, strong Dave Valley was at the time. He was a monster. So it was kind of, okay, fine. Whatever you say, let's do it.
But have you guys seen that side of Valley at all previously? That intensity?
I know Pudge and I had played against him for a long time, and Rusty was, been in the big leagues for, a few years. So we knew him from playing against him from the Mariners for a long period of time. I knew he was that inspirational guy, but I didn't know he had that much until that meeting. And you really don't know a guy until you play with him. So even though we played against him a little bit, we knew who he was. We knew his personality. We knew he was a super nice guy and a guy that was always positive. But until we played with him that year, and then especially after that meeting, it was like, man, this guy is definitely more than what was advertised.
There's another guy I wanted to ask you guys all about. I mean, it amazes me to think it's been almost 20 years since Johnny Oates managed his last game in Texas, but I think he meant something different to each one of you guys. And I just wanted to get 20 years later, your thoughts on what he meant to you and your careers at that moment. But he was a catcher and you were still a young catcher at that time.
Well, for me, he was kind of like a father for me, and on the field. I remember, that I have a lot of conversations with Johnny. To me, Johnny was a manager for me. In my opinion, that he was like another player. He was a guy that, didn't put any pressure to you. The only thing he tells you is play hard, do the 100% effort every day, and I'm good with that. I understand that baseball is not an easy sport to play, but as long as you give me 100% effort, I'm pretty good. Always early in the ballpark. I think probably Johnny was the first guy to arrive into the ballpark every day, throwing batting practice to our kids, and hitting phone goes to our sons, to our kids on the field. I mean, he was like a very nice person to have with uniform. To me, he was like even though that he was our manager, but I feel like he was our best friend when we play with Johnny Oates.
Rusty, I think at that point in time, you were still feeling your way around the big leagues. My first impressions of you in '97 were that you were still, you were confident in your ability, but you were not real confident in necessarily who you are, being a voice. And I think Johnny helped bring some of that out in you. And I think there's some similarities in your personalities. What did you get from him?
Well, remember, 96 was the first full year I played, because 94 we had a strike, 95 was shortened. So 96 was the first full year I played. And so, yeah, being a young guy, you still kind of question yourself whether you belong and can fit in. But Johnny, for me, he came along at the right time in my career. I mean, he in essence made my career, because once I went to the 3 spot when Will got hurt, I never left it. And this doesn't happen in today's game. Johnny, he put the saddles on the horses and rode them until they went and asked for a drink. And if you didn't go ask, you played. It didn't matter if you were 0 for 30 in the lineup. And for me, being a young guy, having somebody put that confidence, you're my left fielder, you're hitting this place, and whatever you do is good, go out and play the game. That was big for me. And the other thing of it is he was, as I said, he was a veteran manager. So when he said, I let the guys run the clubhouse, he literally let the players run the clubhouse until he had to jerk the reins at times. And today you hear a lot, well, I'll let the players run the clubhouse, but in essence, they really don't. Johnny let players run the clubhouse. And so it was vital for those older guys, Pudge, Mac, Will, Dave Valley, all those guys, to have that control and that influence over the clubhouse, because there was times when I'd go to the ballpark and be next to Will and say, hey, I don't know if I can play or not. And he would say, we need you in the lineup. Okay, I'm playing. And all I had to do was go tell Johnny I'm good. He's ready to roll. And so for me, he really kind of made my career, because he came along at the right time, believed in me, allowed guys that I respected to push me and hold me accountable. And that's kind of where I started building my way up right there.
Mac,
Wow.
you had familiarity with him from Baltimore, and I think when this guy came over here in '95 was such a weird year for everybody for so many reasons, because of the strike and shortened spring training. But you had some experience with Johnny, and in '96 and '98, did you find yourself at all, because he's a little bit of a quirky personality, right? Did you find yourself having to kind of translate for Johnny to guys a little bit and being kind of his surrogate voice?
Yeah, it's funny. I did. You know, I played for Johnny for 3 years in Baltimore before coming to Texas. And for me, Johnny represents so much more than just being a manager. He's a guy that was responsible for resurrecting my career, basically, in Baltimore. By the time I got to Texas, I had 8 years. I'd been in big leagues for 8 years. But there was some, you know, before I got to Baltimore, I was in and out of the lineup, in the minor leagues, back and forth. But Johnny gave me that opportunity to go out there every day. And just like what Wesley was saying, he put those saddles on the horse and said, hey, go out there. I don't care if you're over 30. You're going out there, give me 100% and be on time. Those were the two things: be on time and give me 100%. And that's what he did for me in Baltimore. He ran me out there. It didn't matter what it was, over 30, over 34, which I had. He kept running me out there every day. So that enabled me to get for him, he had a lot of confidence in me. So when he came to Texas, I was his first call. He said, Mac, do you want to follow me to Texas? I was absolutely sure. So not only did he resurrect my career, he also pushed me from being that middle veteran guy to that veteran guy that had a lot more responsibility. And the way he did it was, I wasn't happy with it initially until I figured out why he did what he did. There was a play that I'm not going to say who my shortstop partner was, but I called the signs, and my shortstop partner missed it. And I know Pudge was not happy because he ended up with an error because he threw a missile into center field because my shortstop didn't cover. So I know what's going to happen when we go in the dugout. Johnny's going to get all over the shortstop, and then I'm going to have to talk to the shortstop and kind of, you know, calm him down a little bit. I was wrong. Johnny came over to me and let me have it. And I was furious. And so I didn't speak to Johnny for maybe 2 or 3 days, and that was very unusual. And I walked by his office one day, and he ran out and jumped on my back. And that's something he didn't do very often because we all know Johnny had a bad back. And he jumped on my back, and I still didn't say anything. When I say jumped on my back, I mean physically. And I took a few steps, and I just stood there, and he just whispered in my ear, "It's your time," and just jumped off. And that's when it hit me. He wants me to take more responsibility because I am a veteran player now. We've got some younger guys on the team, and he needs leaders. Not just one, but multiple leaders. And it kind of shocked me, and I felt about that big because I was, you know, I had ignored him for a few days, but he instilled in me and gave me that opportunity to help lead this team as best I could. So I'll never forget him for that, and that changed my mindset, you know, even then on how to approach the game and how to deal with different things as they came up.
Evan, think about this, Evan. Think about this. For me, being in my third season, first really full season, with the veteran lineup that we had, for him to look at me and say, "You're the 3-hitter" in place of Will Clark of all people. Think about what that does for a player's confidence. That just takes it to a next level. Now, when obviously when you're successful, you're going to be playing, but when you're struggling and you're still in there, and there were days that I never looked at the lineup because I knew I was playing left and third.
Yes.
That does tremendous amounts for not only a veteran's confidence, but for a young guy's confidence. Say, this guy believes in me, and look at the players around me that could be hitting third in his lineup. So I think everything he did had a purpose behind it. It wasn't a guess. And He succeeded for it.
You know, my best.
Also to add about Rusty, he was also a manager that he wasn't a guy that give you a day off. If you want a day off, you need to go and tell him that I need a day off. He was I think to me personally, I think probably in spring training, I already had 162 lineups already put it on.
100%.
He always put the same guys into you tell him I need a day off. I mean, correct me guys if I'm wrong. I mean, he was those kind of managers that tell you you're playing, but when you need a break, I don't have a problem. Come to the office and you just let me know.
Yeah, you had a lot of teams that when a guy couldn't play, he would tell the trainer, and the trainer would go tell the manager. But Johnny's rule was, if you can't go, you need to walk into my office and tell me.
Tell me.
Hey, and how many times did you walk into the office going, God, I got a barking hammy or something, Skip, I can't play today. By the time you left, you were unplaying.
I didn't go in. I already knew. I just didn't go in.
You know what my enduring memory of that is, and we were never in the office, obviously, for any kind of conversations like that. But I remember one day, I don't remember if it was 90, I think it was 98, the middle of an MVP year. It was one of those days when I don't think Juan was feeling it. And we're in the clubhouse during the open clubhouse period, and I look over, and there's Johnny on one knee in front of Juan's locker, talking to Juan, down on one knee, because Juan's head was down. He was not feeling good, and basically telling him, we need you in the lineup. The next thing he goes out there, he plays. It's the middle of an MVP season. And it's just like he was willing to go the extra mile to do what he needed to do in those instances when he needed his horses in there.
Yeah. Juan is like that. That's why we love him a lot. That's why we love him so much. You know, he was those kind of guy that he has those kind of attitudes sometimes that he show up, sometimes that he doesn't want to play or show up and he wants to play. But we get used to be the way he is. But let me tell you, I mean, I love those days that he doesn't want to come and play, because to me, those are his best games that he plays. You know what I mean? Like, he helped us unbelievable. I remember that Johnny did that. I mean, I think he did more than a few times. And some of those games, he didn't want to put the uniform. And anyway, he still go and play 9 innings and hit 2 home runs and get 5 RBIs in and come in and throw stuff in the clubhouse and left early. Like that. I mean, this is just like, that's the way Juan is. But everybody knows who's Juan, so we love him. So that's the way he was.
Well, and for me, looking back on it, there's a reason that Pudge won an MVP and Juan won 2 MVPs while playing with Johnny. Johnny knew that Pudge could handle catching 150 games a year and the heat and all that stuff, and knew he wanted to play. Ran him out there. Juan, he knew that to get the best out of Juan, sometimes you had to let some things go and pull the reins on the others. And I'll give you a good example of the Hall of Fame game we went to. You remember the pants didn't fit. And so Johnny, everybody got all up in arms about it, but Johnny was kind of like, oh, it's not that big a deal. Going to your point, getting on the knee, talking to Juan, man to man, to say, hey, we need you to play. But then also saw him one day in the dugout. He's out there running sprints with Ray because he had a bad hamstring, running sprints with Ray. And Ray comes over and Johnny, who never came to the dugout early, standing there watching. And Ray says, he says he can't go, need a couple more days. And Johnny said, you tell him he's hitting 4th and playing right. Trying to walk off. And to Pudge's point, Juan goes out there. He was mad. He goes like 3 for 4 with a homer and a double and like 4 RBIs, And so I think Johnny had understood each guy and what made them the best and how to handle each guy. And that's how he got the most out of the players.
That's what a manager is, and that's what a manager does. He manages every personality in that clubhouse. And you have to know what makes a guy tick, what doesn't, when you can kick a guy in the butt, or when you need to pat him on the back, or when you need to get down on one knee and have that man-to-man conversation with him, or just tell him what's going to happen. Johnny was very, very good at that. And I think that's one of the big reasons we were so successful in all those years, because Johnny knew how to get to each and every person in that clubhouse. one of the things that he would do just before we break camp, even the guys, okay, long-term deals, they're going to be there. He would walk around to every player on that team and tell them exactly what he expected from them for that upcoming season. So he knew exactly what he wanted to get across to whoever it was that he was talking to, and when he needed to get into them, or when he needed to tell them what he needed to tell them, so they'd understand what was expected of them. So that was one of the biggest things that made him, in my mind, one of the best managers that I know I played for.
Absolutely.
You guys, you came so close in '96 to the Yankees, but I think as time went on, we certainly in the media grasped onto that narrative about can't beat the Yankees, and they were a great team. There's no doubt about that. But what are your memories of what those 3 Yankees playoff series were to you? Were you the last 2? Did you feel like you ever had a chance in them? Did you feel like there was some kind of obstacle you couldn't overcome? What was the feeling there?
Well, I think we do. I think we have a good feeling that we can have a good playoff. Obviously, I mean, we have to say the truth. I mean, you see the Yankees records, and you see how their records and World Series they have in the '90s. So obviously, we have to say that the Yankees have an unbelievable team, and also we start our playoff, with the Yankees, and and to me it's a different series when you play best out of 5 and best out of 7. I think probably if we probably face the Yankees in one of those series best out of 7, could be a different scenario. But when you're facing the best teams, some of the best pitchers and the best, obviously, closer and setup man that the Yankees has at the time, and when you have a 5-game just to figure it out, it's kind of a little tough. But I think we did our best. We did everything that we can to win, but they play better than us. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think, we felt really good every time we played them. I know, we didn't have any problems with them. If I remember correctly, each one of those years, we actually won the season series against them.
First
so
one,
we played
96
first year,
but the regular season series, I think that's correct. I'm not sure about 98, but I think in 99 you did.
Yeah, so we played them well. Even in New York, we played them well. So I don't think that was any problem. I just think they were a better team at that time in the postseason. They rose to the occasion, and for whatever reason, they were able to start playing better baseball in the second half of the season, and they would keep that momentum all the way through the postseason. So we had a really good team. We had really good teams every time we played them. We were confident. They just played better. That's just what it boils down to. I mean, they've got obviously a few guys that are Hall of Famers. So they were just playing some really, really good baseball at the right time.
Yeah. Well, they had the same thing. Think about what we're talking about with those teams there, and our manager, they pretty much had the same thing on their side with Torrey and all those guys there. And so they were a buzzsaw at that time. And I guarantee if you talk to any of those guys, they would say roughly the same things we're saying about their manager and how he kept things together and put lineups together and trusted players to go out and play. And at that point in time, they were a buzzsaw for us. And we couldn't do it.
So we'll leave it with this. What is if you were going to sum up for people your experiences as a member of the 1990s Texas Rangers, how would you do it? Let's start with Mac, since you hit leadoff some.
The way I would sum it up, man, I mean, if you just look at, what we're doing here right now, great friendships, lifelong friendships. That's one of the things that I really look back on, and I'm really, really fond of, proud of, and happy about the friendships that were created with those teams. I mean, I haven't talked to Pudge in a few months, haven't talked to Rusty in a few months, but it's like we just spoke yesterday. Every time we get together or we talk or see each other, it's, we just go right back to it. And that's, I mean, for me, that means a lot. That's all of it. The baseball part of it, that's great. That's fine. That's fun. and I know fans remember that more than anything else. But what really is special to me are the lifelong friendships that were created in my 5 years here.
Well, I'm the same way, but I'm going to go a little bit more back into, when I got in 1991. I think I'm going to start obviously with the team that I arrived in 1991. Play with great players, play with great teammates. Grew up with veteran players. Through my 90s with the Rangers, watching all this, super great players, veteran player, Franco, Sierra, Ryan. I mean, now, seeing Rusty came in, see Michael Young and see Elvis Andrews later on in my career as a Ranger. To me, I see them, I see Elvis right now playing, and I've said to myself, I can't believe this kid plays with me a few years. Have the honor and thrill to play with you, Mac, and play with Rusty and all those guys. But I think the most important is like what you said, the chemistry, being a friend, not on the clubhouse, but I think we get along always with the families too. I mean, we're talking about teammates, the wives, kids, everybody get along so well, which is still today, when we see our wife, we say hello, we hug and say, how you doing, all that. So that is something, that never forget to be able just to be in the 90s and met great people, play with great teammates, professional players that love, care to play the game, respect the uniform that they wore at the time. And even though that we have different colors of uniform, but it doesn't matter the color of the uniform, we just go out there and play for those great fans in Texas.
Yeah, for me, it's kind of along those lines. It's the friendships. I think it's the bond that we formed by playing on the field together. The memories that were made in some of those games, and the memories that were made off the field. And for me, a lot of people retire from their job and they're happy to be retired. I'm happy to be retired, but if I could turn the clock back to 1994 and play 10 more years, you better believe I'd be clicking the button right now and go back and do it again, especially with the guys that I played with all throughout those years. That would be something that I would do in a heartbeat, just because you just don't understand what that bond and chemistry and friendship that you go through for all those years, putting in your time and effort to achieve a goal, what it does for you.
That's great, guys. You guys have been awesome. And I just want to say that you guys gave me a hard time sometimes, but you also made it really educational for a young baseball reporter at the time to learn the game and learn how to give it back as good as I got it from you guys. And I appreciate that. And I'm glad that 25 years later, we're still talking, actually. So thank you for all that. And I think this is going to mean a lot to a lot of Ranger fans right now. And you guys stay safe, and let's see each other at a ballpark real soon, shall we?
All right. Sounds good, man. Good to see you guys. All right now.
All right, guys.
Later.
Take care.